White House.
Right. Speaking of the White House, apparently regulations regarding train safety were changed during the Trump administration. This particular railroad and others lobbied President Trump to dismantle an Obama-era rule that would have required railroads to update their braking systems. And apparently the Obama administration had pushed for it to govern transportation of hazardous materials after about 500,000 barrels of crude were dumped. But ultimately, the Trump administration undid that and said the costs exceeded the benefits.
It's not every day that you catch Fox News telling the truth and doing so at the expense of Donald Trump. Take a listen to this clip as Fox and Friends breaks down why it is that he himself and his administration, they are culpable for the derailment that took place in East Palestine, Ohio.
The White House.
Right. Speaking of the White House, apparently regulations regarding train safety were changed during the Trump administration. This particular railroad and others lobbied President Trump to dismantle an Obama-era rule that would have required railroads to update their braking systems. And apparently the Obama administration had pushed for it to govern transportation of hazardous materials after about 500,000 barrels of crude were dumped. But ultimately, the Trump administration undid that and said the costs exceeded the benefits.
Now, this is surprising, and I don't want us to think for a second that Fox News has decided to go the way of actual journalism. No, this is a result of a decision that was made by Rupert Murdoch that essentially decided to ditch Donald Trump in exchange for Ron DeSantis. And we've seen over the weekend, Fox News began running flattering documentaries on Ron DeSantis while simultaneously deciding to tell the truth about Donald Trump, which is so fascinating to me that all you have to do to undermine conservatism is to actually tell the truth, which makes Fox actually labeling itself as news quite the oxymoron. But I digress. It is, in fact, Donald Trump administration, the Trump administration, that is responsible for repealing the Obama-era rules that would have possibly prevented this disaster by ensuring that the same braking protocols that are required, the enhanced braking, is applied to trains that carry toxic materials. But Donald Trump's administration, along with so many other Republicans, right? This is Republican orthodoxy to get rid of regulations. It is the holy grail of conservatism to do away with as much quote unquote red tape as possible. And here in this example, we see how rolling back regulations lead to disaster. But that didn't stop Donald Trump from showing up to East Palestine, Ohio yesterday on what I consider to be a campaign stop. He promoted himself. He threw out his hats, his Make America Great Again, Cult 45 hats. And he also promoted himself by distributing his own personal brand of water. But there was no conversation yesterday about the responsibility that his administration had. In fact, the conversation was more about why President Biden hadn't showed up yet.
Your representatives and all of the politicians get here, including Biden. They get back from touring Ukraine, that he's got some money left over because we're now at $117 billion. And as you probably know, Europe, when you add it all up, is at about $10 billion. That's a big difference, wouldn't you say?
Here's a clip of Pete Buttigieg, who showed up to East Palestine, Ohio today, and he did what he does so well, which is to call Republicans on the carpet about the hypocrisy. Here he is, Pete Buttigieg, calling out Donald Trump and pointing out the fact that he is himself, his administration, they are partly culpable. They are culpable for what happened in East Palestine.
One thing he could do is express support for reversing the deregulation that happened on his watch. I heard him say he had nothing to do with it, even though it was in his administration. So if he had nothing to do with it and they did it in his administration against his will, maybe he could come out and say that he supports us moving in a different direction. We're not afraid to own our policies when it comes to raising the bar on regulation. And I've got to think that him indicating that this is something that everybody, no matter how much you disagree on politics and presidential campaigns, can get behind. Higher fines, tougher regulations on safety, Congress untying our hands on breaking rules, all the other things that go with that, that'd be a nice thing for him to do.
Protect the White House.
Right. Speaking of the White House, apparently regulations regarding train safety were changed during the Trump administration. This particular railroad and others lobbied President Trump to dismantle an Obama-era rule that would have required railroads to update their braking systems. And apparently the Obama administration had pushed for it to govern transportation of hazardous materials after about 500,000 barrels of crude were dumped. But ultimately, the Trump administration undid that and said the costs exceeded the benefits.
Now, despite all this, it still is amazing to see Fox News actually tell the truth, and to do so at the expense of a fellow Republican. It's become normal for us to expect the lies, the propaganda, the misstatements, the misinformation coming from Fox News. So I want us to make sure that we are not mistaking this as a pivot towards actual rigorous journalism and for Fox News to become actually fair and balanced. No, this is their pivot away from Donald Trump. Donald Trump has run his course. He is no longer useful to Rupert Murdoch and the rest of Fox News. They are throwing their lots in with Ron DeSantis. Ron DeSantis is the person that Fox News has chosen to be the next president of the United States. So we can rest assured that we are going to see a very long campaign season of Fox News going after Donald Trump while promoting Ron DeSantis. And I'm quite sure this is going to drive Donald Trump bananas. So we can see and expect an escalation in hostilities between these two camps as the Republican Party devolves into more of a civil war. While they're promoting a civil war with the rest of America, the truth is they have to solve the civil war inside of their camp. Who is going to be the leader of the Republican Party in 2024? A lot of names have been thrown around, but we can pretty much narrow it down to two people, Ron DeSantis and Donald Trump. And Fox News has already picked their horse in this race. It's going to be Ron DeSantis. So as Donald Trump continues to be held accountable, or at least be called out for the many things his administration is responsible for, I would love to sit back and watch Fox News do what it did this morning, which is to just tell the truth, Fox. If you tell the truth, then conservatism falls apart. If you tell the truth, then Fox News falls apart. So perhaps we should not expect any more truth from Fox News except this one-off. Be sure to share, like, and subscribe to Really American, where we are building one of the largest media organizations' response to the massive right-wing propaganda that is attacking our country. If you want to be a part of this movement to push back against right-wing fascism and conservatism, misinformation and propaganda, subscribe to this channel.